So here we are at the third stage of the wealth exaltation game strategy, where together we are going to put together a working game plan. So let's discuss what it means and what you need to formulate a structured game plan for this archetype. Let's start by saying that without taking massive action, the most delightful dreams with the best intentions are nothing more than delusional wishes. Therefore, if you want to ensure a better tomorrow whilst guaranteeing a brighter future, you must make a plan of daily actions today to achieve it. Because the new future and the new you only arrives by cultivating new skills as a daily action plan. So from the profile that you've created in stage 2, you can now extrapolate from this a working game plan. The working game plan will outline both the actions and inactions that are required for you to discipline this archetype into your life. You must define what actions you will take, what necessary changes you must make to your current lifestyle, and what you must do to develop the attributes of this archetype. So let's put together a working game plan for your archetype. Pause the video right now and write in your journal the next subtitle, the working game plan of the archetype's name. Now what follows is a set of explorative questions to guide you to establish the actions and inactions that are required for you to become this archetype. Let's begin with those explorative questions. Question number 31. What new knowledge, skill sets and equipment do you need in order to transform into this archetype, and where and how do you obtain this? Now this is important because to actualize the traits of this archetype, you are most probably going to need to learn something new. You will need to learn a new way of thinking, being and doing in order to talk the talk and walk the walk of this archetype. You may need to learn a new strategy and method for this archetype to achieve its goal. So what is it about this archetype that you don't know that you need to know? What are the main skills that this archetype needs to develop? What equipment do you need to perform the role of this archetype? Do you need clothes, tools, books, a vehicle perhaps? So figure this out. Where will you get this knowledge, skill set and equipment from? Who has what you need, and by what means, resources and ways do you have to get these things? Question number 32. What are the main activities that you must engage with to express this archetype, and where and with whom does this take place? So that's simple and obvious, right? There are certain things that you need to do and perform, certain tasks and duties. And what are they? And make a list of them, along with exactly where will these activities take place. Is it at home, at a workplace, at the gym, in the park, or a completely different location? What place will this activity take place? And then, who are you going to do this with? Is it with one person, two people, a group of people, or will you be doing this alone? Where and with whom does the activity of this archetype take place? Question number 33. Is there anyone that you know, be it friends, family members, or successful people that have the same attributes of this archetype? And if so, how can you model their actions to get the results more efficiently? Because why reinvent the will. If it's already being done and someone is already getting the results, then you could save yourself a lot of time and effort by just modeling what they are doing. Rather than trying to figure out how things work on your own, instead, you can seek out that someone that already exhibits the traits and results of this archetype, and then start to mirror their actions so that you get the same effect. And of course, you can tweak things with your own style and even innovate things a little bit more. And like I said, when someone has got a working and winning strategy, model it. Model it and innovate it. So do have a look around at your social circle, your family circle, celebrity circles, any circle, where you can see that someone is already exhibiting the traits of your archetype. Find out what they are doing, study them, take notes, and then pull it into action. Question number 34. What repetitive actions will cultivate the behavioural traits of this archetype? Now, this should be easy to answer. Just think of 1 or 3 actions maximum that you can take daily, consistently, without fail, that will be you stepping into the role of this archetype. Question number 35. What environment does this archetype best thrive in, and how do you spend more time there? So with this question, I want you to think of one specific place, mode, or location, and this could be anywhere and anything. It could be relaxing at home, working at the office, doing something in the garden, out in the countryside, swimming in the water, or traveling on a vehicle, where this archetype feels most at home, doing its thing. What would be the perfect setting that would entice you, excite you, motivate you to express your archetype? Describe what that is. Then, how are you going to spend more time there? What rearrangements do you need to make? What do you need to cancel or sacrifice so that this now becomes a priority? Question number 36. What emergency situations will you need this archetype the most? So here, I want you to think of situations where you are feeling emotionally down or stressed out, or where you are in places of high risk, danger, potential loss and harm, whereby this archetype has specific traits that will assist you in finding relief, escapism, security, and safety. Question 37. How often do you need this archetype in your life? I.e., is it a daily practice, fortnightly, at the weekends, or just on certain occasions? And as you answer this question, just keep in mind that human beings are very good at changing roles as per what is required for a particular situation at hand. So, for example, if you have just walked out of the work office and now you're heading over to the gym for a workout, then in that transitional stage, you are transitioning from being a worker to an exerciser, of which you will be shifting your mindset and energy, ready for the change of roles. Likewise, you will be shifting in and out of the role of this archetype. You won't always be in the mindset and energy of this archetype. You will only need to be this archetype occasionally, but these will be regular occasions. So how often will you be this archetype? Do you need this archetype in your life daily, weekly, fortnightly, or at the weekends? When are the appropriate days in the week to be this archetype? Which leads us on to the next question, question number 38. What specific times of those days do you need to express the traits of this archetype to ensure that it becomes a habit? The point of this question is to really dial in your commitment towards when and how often you are going to discipline yourself with the behaviours of this archetype. Question number 39. What are the key triggers that will activate this archetype? So what specific people, situations, thoughts and feelings will signal the time for you to shift into the role play of this discipline? So right here with this question, I want you to think about both the internal and external stimulus that will trigger you to know when it's time to be this archetype, so that this archetype is anchored into your mind body. So with internal stimulus, what are the thoughts and feelings that you will have, that when you have them, you will know that it's time to switch into the role of this archetype. With external stimulus, I want you to think about when certain people arrive into your life, or when you are faced with a certain situation, that you will know when these things happen, it's time for you to become this archetype. And let me give you an example. Let us use the archetype of the environmentalist as the example. So with internal stimulus, the environmentalist could be triggered by a thought, and that thought could be very, very simple. Something as simple as, this work is stressing me out, I really could do with a break. And the moment that you have that thought, rather than ignoring that thought and carrying on with the work that's stressing you out, you would instead know it's time to become the environmentalist, where you take immediate time out from the stressful activity to go and find some peace and tranquility in nature, be it a walk in the park, along the seaside, in a forest, or whatever it is local and takes your fancy. With external stimulus, the environmentalist could be triggered by the cheap, chemicalized and modified food that's being served up in those dodgy supermarkets. And so think about where and how your archetype would be triggered by stimulus, and then what would be the new action, the redirection towards a better alternative. Question 40. What are the key triggers that will deactivate this archetype? So what specific people, situations, thoughts and feelings must you avoid that would prevent you from being this archetype? So this would be a reversal of the last question, but it will produce a similar answer. You are looking to establish the internal and external stimulus that would cause you to abandon the disciplines of this archetype. So let's imagine that we are thinking about the athlete archetype as the example, where the internal stimulus could be the thoughts that are talking you out of doing the exercise or the sport that the athlete would usually do. So that would be the excuses, the delays, the I'll do it tomorrow, that is talking you out of doing what the athlete would usually do. Or it could be a feeling. You could be feeling tired, feeling too comfortable, feeling like you can't be bothered, feeling low, and these feelings are preventing you from getting into the athlete mindset. Then we have the external stimulus, which could be a situation where perhaps you are having to work a little bit earlier in the morning to late at night, and therefore you put off, you reason with yourself you haven't got the time to exercise, and thus you don't. So think about all of the ways, all of the internal and external stimulus that would prevent you from being this archetype, so that you are aware of any self sabotaging pattern that would prevent you from being this archetype, so that you are aware of any self-sabotaging patterns. So you know when and where you have to break certain patterns so that you can stay on track with this archetype. Question 41, in what healthy ways can you reward yourself for each time that you follow through with the actions of this archetype? Okay, so with this question, this is all about reinforcing behavior. You must set up regular rewards for following through with the new behavior of this archetype. Now, these could be small daily rewards, these could be special weekly treats, and monthly milestone rewards, or a combination of all three, where you have decided that when you achieve a certain amount of days' work, a certain amount of actions, when you complete a certain task or get a specific result and reach this particular level, that will be the time for you to reward yourself, and really do reward yourself. Set up your life so that you are continually rewarding yourself for the hard work that you put in, so that the rewards become your incentives and is pulling you towards your goal and giving you something to look forward to and making your efforts worthwhile. So take the time out now to figure out what type of rewards and how often will you incorporate them in your life to help you along with this transformation. Question 42, how can you minimize the risk, i.e. lessen the discomforts and disruptions to your life whilst you undergo the transformational process of this archetype? Now, this is important. You want to reduce the potential pain, loss, and hardship as you embark on the journey of becoming this archetype. And of course, as you start this transformation, as you begin to change your ways, habits, and lifestyle patterns, there will be discomfort and disruption along the way. You will be doing things that alters and disturbs your relationship to the other aspects of your life, because you must now allocate time to do the work and task to become this archetype. Maybe this transformation will cause disruptions to the time that you can spend with a loved one. Therefore, how would you reassure your loved one? How could you perhaps get them involved and rearrange your time together so you don't lose out? Could be that you sacrifice time spent watching your favourite programs on Netflix. And of course, this is going to be a discomfort. You're going to feel like you're losing out. So perhaps you could flip this around so that your Netflix time could be a reward for completing a task of your archetype. So again, with this question, I want you to identify where you would be losing out on something of comfort, or you'll be causing disruption to your current lifestyle, and then figure out how this could be rearranged into your schedule to ensure that you don't completely lose out on everything. Question 43, how can you maximize safety and maintain stability in your life whilst you undergo this transformational process? So this is similar to the last question, but this time focus on where you must maintain safety and stability in your life whilst becoming this archetype. And what do I mean by safety and stability? Well, if you have to invest money into buying resources to become this archetype, then obviously you don't want to spend beyond your means and then put yourself in a tough financial spot. Also think about how and where you will be performing the actions of this archetype. Do you need to consider how safe things have to be so that you avoid damage and injury to you, others, or your equipment? How will you balance your lifestyle when you introduce the new actions of this archetype? Will you need to alter the times that you wake up and you go to sleep? Will you need to swap tasks with someone? Will you need to incorporate a new period of rest and recuperation into your life to compensate, to counterbalance the efforts of this archetype? In what ways must you reschedule, adjust, rebalance, be conservative and cautious to ensure that you are safe and secure as you accommodate the new changes of this archetype? Which leads us on to the next question, question 44. What sacrifices are you willing to accept and tolerate to make this archetype a part of your life? And make no mistake, you will have to make a sacrifice. There will be something that you have to quit, that you have to let go of, that you have to leave behind, that you have to go without, so that you can transform into this new archetype. It will be something that you're familiar with, comfortable with, habituated to, that you must now accept that this particular thing can no longer be a part of your life. So what do you need to sacrifice to make room for this new archetype? What must you sacrifice that would otherwise sabotage the progress of your new archetype? How many things do you need to sacrifice? How much sacrifice can you handle so that you don't sacrifice too much and you are left feeling pissed off, miserable and resentful as you become this archetype? Because you don't want to drag any of that negative energy with you. It will just weigh you down and trip you up somewhere down the line. So give this question some serious thought and decide what you can tolerate to sacrifice to become this archetype. Question 45. What is the path of least resistance towards the highest outcome of this archetype? This question is designed for you to think about the most efficient and effective way to get the best results when being this archetype, because you certainly don't want to choose the hardest, intense, slowest, or morale draining method or strategy to get the results, because this will only elicit the pain of stress, frustration, anxiety, and that pain will become a deterrent, a blocking force that makes you feel like doing less and less or giving up somewhere down the line when enough is enough. And since we all have different thresholds of how much pain we can tolerate as we push forward, you need to work out what is best for you, because you will need to push through some resistance to become this archetype. That resistance could be negative thoughts and low energy. That resistance could be doing the actual work and the obstacles and challenges that you face along the way. Therefore, rather than jumping into this like a ball in a china shop where you create a load of chaos and are left panting and tired out very quickly, I want you to approach the transformation of this archetype with the mindset of accuracy, consistency, and longevity. Because the more you can focus on the sweet spot of what you need, the more you can isolate at one specific task, and the longer you can spread that task out over a certain timeline, the less impact and less tension there will be, the less resistance. Therefore, what would be the most accurate, consistent, and endurable way for you to adopt the methods of this archetype? What one thing should you focus on first? How can you best manage your time and emotions whilst doing this? And when will you know that there is too much resistance and know that it's time to stop and rest? How can you approach this one step, one task, one day at a time, so that you don't suffer with overwhelm and fatigue? How much time can you reasonably allocate? How much resistance can you handle when playing the role of this archetype, so that it becomes a fun and enjoyable experience rather than something that you dread because of the effort that's involved? Question 46. What bad actions/habits prevent you from becoming this archetype? Why and how do you need to stop these? This should be obvious, right? Whatever it is that you are currently doing that goes against the morals, principles, efforts, results, and desired outcome of your archetype, you must stop right now. Because these things, they're like your kryptonite. They will weaken, limit, and stop you dead in your tracks. So make a short list of what they are. Make it clear in your mind these are the dangers, the pitfalls, and the shortfalls, and that they must immediately stop and be avoided at all times. Question 47. What specific people, places, and problems do you need to avoid that would otherwise prevent this transformation from happening? Because without a doubt, there will be people in your life, it could be work colleagues, friends, or family, that will be these huge triggers that tempt you back to your old ways. So, for example, as part of this dietary transformation that I'm currently going through, part of that transformation was to give up drinking coffee, caffeine, in exchange for orange juice. Now that's a huge shift for me, because I've spent the last 2.5 decades chugging down 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day. And my first coffee, which was early in the morning, was my get up and go, my brain sparkle, my mental crutch. I just couldn't be without. Plus, I used to do a lot of laptop work in those lovely and comfortable coffee shops, and it was a huge lifestyle, psychological and habitual change for me to give up the coffee and go with orange juice. And I do practice what I preach, so I made this seismic shift in my life to exchange the coffee from orange juice and make these massive transformational and lifestyle changes. Even so, when I recently visited my parents' home for a few days, my mother, bless her, she just couldn't understand why I had to give up that lovely warm cup of coffee that I enjoyed so much. And she kept offering me a cup of coffee whenever she made a cup of coffee, and kept saying to me, "Oh, go on, have a cup of coffee. It will make you feel good." Needless to say, I couldn't avoid my mother, but I had conditioned myself to remain disciplined. And the point I'm trying to get at is this: if you are quitting something old to do something new, and the people that you know are likely to tempt you back to your old ways, then either you must avoid these people where you can, or you've got to get used to saying no, to rejecting temptation. The same applies to those usual places that trigger your old ways. So again, using my coffee addiction as an example, naturally I had to stop going to coffee shops, which was a difficult thing to do when there seems to be coffee shops everywhere nowadays. But that said, I have now become disciplined with my new transformation, that I can now visit coffee shops with friends once in a while and not drink coffee. Which brings us to those problems that we face in life, those problems that stress us out, drag us down, and put a spanner in the works. That's because when we are faced with the discomfort of major problems, we tend to shrink back into our comfortable ways, our comfortable habits, to get some relief and feel better. And it's these major problems in life that can set back the good work that we do when trying to make a transformation. So now I want you to think about your archetype and then consider what people, places, and problems that could upset you, tempt you, sabotage you, and prevent you from being the new person that you need to be. Identify what these are, how they would happen, and why and how you need to avoid these. Question number 48. What are you not willing to accept and tolerate in your life anymore in order for this archetype to thrive? Now, I want you to draw a line in the sand that says, I'm standing here and I refuse to stand over there with you in that place. Where you make a declaration that this is how it's going to be for me from this point onwards. Where you declare that I will not participate with that anymore and I refuse to have that in my life. By identifying what you will not accept and tolerate in your life, you then empower yourself to know exactly where, when, and how to diffuse and refuse people, situations, and even yourself that could otherwise scupper your transformation. You must get very clear and adamant and resolute by saying that this is not for me, that that's not who I am anymore. I just don't do those things. I don't want that around me. I do not want this in my life. So identify right now with this question what you will no longer accept and tolerate in your life. Make a list of the things, describe them in detail. So that's it. Those are the questions that will give you the answers to formulate an action plan. And I know that we've been super thorough here in defining the role of your new archetype, but this was essential because the more clarified you are with who you are going to be, with what you are going to do, and what you are aiming for, the more focused, aware, and attentive and precise your mind will be towards achieving that outcome. But knowing what to do is just the start. You now need to do the doing part. You must now take massive action. So now that you've established the do's and don'ts of your archetype, you now have a good idea of a game plan. You now know how to organize yourself, your day, your week, and year to make the outcomes of this archetype a reality. And all you now have to do is make a list of the 5 immediate steps that you can put into action right away, today, and over the course of tomorrow to get you started. So do it now. Right now, pause the tape and work out those 5 immediate steps. Then start taking massive action. No ifs, ands, or buts. And remember that there are no cheat codes for personal growth. You simply put the work in to get the results out. So take the decision today that you will take the necessary actions to become the change that you want to see in your world. Step into the characteristics of your new archetype and start acting out the role. Start thinking, walking, and talking with the traits of this archetype, living and breathing the role that you play, which leads us on to the next part of this stage. Now, this part is optional. You can do it or you can opt out and go straight to stage 4. This part of stage 3 is called future-proof your archetype. Let me begin this by saying that for any personal transformation, nothing can substitute repetitive action. And of course, the mental attitude that we bring to the game of life does have the power to either demotivate or motivate that action. So to ensure that lower self-thinking does not sabotage the higher self-intentions of your new archetype, you can reinforce this archetype into your mind by utilizing the knack technique that you've already mastered to associate the forces of pain and pleasure to your new archetype, so that you have strong reasons to change that act as drivers and pullers to keep you on track. You can do this by providing at least 5 different answers to each of the 2 questions that follow. Question number 37. How does my new archetype assist with my healing, growing and excelling over the next 5, 10 and 20 years from now, both spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, socially and financially, and why is this an absolute must for me and my loved ones? Question number 38. If I do not cultivate the traits of my archetype, how does my life degrade, both mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, socially and financially over the next 5, 10 and even 20 years from now for me and my loved ones, and why is it crucial this must not happen? So collate 5 different answers to each of those questions and then practice visualizing and affirming those answers. Read and rehearse each affirmation whilst visually projecting yourself into the future to imagine the best case scenarios of you following through with your new actions. Also envisage the worst case scenarios when you do not follow through with your new actions. Then I want you to envisage a time in the future where you have already arrived at the final destination of your archetype, where you are fully actualized and accomplished with the desired outcomes of this archetype. And now we have both arrived at the 4th and final stage of the wealth exaltation game strategy, where discipline defines destiny. That's because adopting new behavioral traits is one of the hardest transformations. Being reborn into someone new is not without the disruptive birthing pains. When the inner compass of who we've been for so long has been wired to behave a certain way, to then engage with new behaviors that are initially out of character and difficult and uncomfortable, will at first feel counterintuitive. It will feel worse and perhaps even wrong, even though your new behaviors are for the better and they are making things right, especially when the mind, body and soul has been a vessel for immorality, vice, falseness, laziness and toxicity. There will be this initial discomfort when doing that which is positive, progressive, true and virtuous. The hardwired and corrupted patterns of the habitual self are likely to trouble you with powerful gut reactions, these feelings of anxiety and protest that beckon you to stop, to pull back, where those gut reactions can override your mind's intentions to do better. The initial gut reaction when faced with discomfort is to pull back and stop progress. And the habitual self will always be a part of you that wants to go back to those old familiar ways. So during the transition period of you making change, what occurs is this infighting tussle between the existing lower self traits and the new disciplines of the higher self, where one part of you wants to progress upwards and forwards, whilst the other part of you, the lower self part, wants to regress backwards. The lower self part of you will always feel uncomfortable, unworthy and inferior when coexisting with higher self actions. Will always be the urge to retract back from that which feels uncomfortable, when really you need to push forward and embrace the discomfort. For massive change to happen, you must do that which feels uncomfortable and counterintuitive to what you've always done. You see, this internal strain of doing what you know to be right and yet it feels wrong in the process is what makes the transformational journey fraught with wobbly moments, slip-ups, slides and setbacks. Wobbly moments occur when we are struck with this overwhelming sense of self-doubt, and this causes us to pause and start to question the desire and reasons for making change. The slip-up is when one reverts back to the indulgence and ease of their old habits for a few days. The slide tends to last for a whole week or two, whereas the setback is to regress backwards to your old habits and rally on for months. Regressing back to the old ways of our lower self habits will always be a risk until the mind body has been totally reconditioned with the new disciplines of our archetype, until the new archetype supersedes. And listen, I myself recently took a little slide. I'm currently making this huge transformation from a carnivore diet to a frugivore diet, from being a meat eater to a fruit eater, from animal products to plant-based food. And in this moment of stress, I was triggered with a craving for ice cream. Ice cream is my Achilles heel. So there I am, I'm triggered by this craving for ice cream. I give in and I then plough my way through several tubs of delicious ice cream over the course of a few days. Even though I know that that ice cream is loaded with toxic chemicals and acidic sugars and totally violates the terms of being a fresh fruit eating frugivore. That said, it did feel good to indulge. What can I say? I am a fallible and imperfect human, and just like you, I do get caught out unawares and then revert back to my unconscious mind programming. I'm usually enticed towards that bad stuff that tastes really great, and just like Michael Corleone from The Godfather said, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. However, I was able to pull myself out of that ice cream nosedive and get myself swiftly back on track. Needless to say, I was feeling terribly guilty at the end of it. And those consequential guilts of my pleasurable escapade did make me realize that I needed to reutilize the knack technique to reaffirm the positive aspects of becoming a frugivore. Therefore, I recommitted to my new change with even more dedication. The point that I do want to stress is this: regressing backwards sometimes is part of the disciplinary process. Sometimes we do need to go back to the old ways to retaste the lows, to reconfirm all of the reasons why we decided to change in the first place. Sometimes we do need a sharp reminder of what we don't want. We sometimes need to relearn a karmic lesson. And most times those little setbacks can instill a renewed sense of resolve that makes for a resurgent comeback. So therefore, micro and macro setbacks are a de facto of life. That no matter how well prepared that we think we are and how good that we think the new venture will be, there will always be some unforeseen circumstance ahead. Everything could be looking smooth, easy and on target. And then at a moment's notice, it could be a phone call, that look, a suggestion, that temptation, or that unwelcomed problem that blows one off course. And nothing is ever plain sailing when the wind blows hard and the body feels weary. There will be times when the tides are slow and the destination seems out of reach. There will be times when we just feel like quitting. Don't ever quit. Hold the line, because what we aim for is not always on time. And remember this, that self-development is not a race. It is a lifetime commitment. So go easy and go slowly. Appreciate the troubling times are here to serve you. Realize that the integrity of your dreams are supposed to be tested every step along the way, so that they can be proven, refined, and strengthened. And if you do feel overwhelmed by an emotional slump and this prevents you from maintaining disciplinary action, then don't fret. If you temporarily regress back into lower self traits, then just take a moment out to reaffirm the deeper meaning and the higher purpose of your chosen archetype. Whenever you are feeling down, that higher calling will pick you back up. Each time that you feel lost, and ensure your archetype's meaningful intentions will light the way forward. Each time you feel weak, your archetype's ambitions will empower you with the strength and motivation to get going again. Whenever you are being regressive, if you do come off the track, if you do go back to your old ways, then take the time out to attune with your mind body and assess the cause and effect. Utilize the skills that you have mastered in this program to realize the problem, review the method, and reassess the action plan. Discern if you are experiencing the early teething pains of transformation, or that you have genuinely taken a wrong approach. Do not be afraid to rework your original plans, and if need be, get back on the horse a different way. Ride the horse in a different direction. With disciplinary action, it's best to have flexibility in the structure. During all transformational processes, it is wise to monitor your progress and make adjustments along the way. Where you can operate within these predetermined perimeters, whilst being able to pivot, flow, and adapt to the changes of situational forces. Because what works in one moment might not work in the next. What is effective one time might be redundant the next time. So be prepared to make whatever changes are necessary to keep moving onwards and upwards, and for a permanent transformation to take hold, which is to say that you have fully embodied your new archetype. It can take anywhere between 1 to 9 months of consistent action until the new discipline has become the habitual trait, and habits form once we have transitioned from taking action that is an absolute effort to do into consistently doing that new thing where it has become effortless, unconscious, and it feels like second nature. And everything is proportionately relative. Integrating new disciplines into your psychological mainframe is subject to your individual tolerance for discipline. That tolerance will be subject to the type of discipline that you instill, your propensity to fall back into old ways, your ability to recover, your willpower and determination to make a transformational change. I myself am a slow learner, and I learn the hard way. Like a moth to a burning flame, I often singe myself a few times before moving on. You may be the same, or you may be efficient at instilling new disciplines. It does take different courses for different horses, and whatever horsepower you've got, work at a pace that works for you. So get the first breakthrough transformation underway with the first archetype. Once you've conditioned its characteristic traits and you feel comfortable with the transformation process, then start working on 2 or 3 archetypes at one time. And this will multiply your results within a reduced time frame, i.e. you will get more done and make more progress. But you must start off at a steady pace first so that you can acclimatize to the transformation process. So when you are ready, choose another 2 or 3 archetypes from your list in stage 1 and then process each archetype through stages 2 and 3. Design their profiles and working game plans and then gradually work them into your life. Discipline the archetypes until by habit they are disciplining you with their positive effects, until the new you is prevailing above everything else. And I guarantee within weeks and months of taking massive action, you will notice a massive shift in the way that you think, feel and live. And within a year from now, you will be a completely different person. So, instill the disciplinary work and get the results. Pay the price today so that you can enjoy greater benefits tomorrow. Practice with patience and perseverance to manifest the life that you dream of. Master this final game to win the ultimate prize of mental and lifestyle wealth.